All right, let's jump right in. If you're prepping for exams like the UPSC, you absolutely know that the geography of Africa is a must-know topic. So today, we're doing a super fast crash course to get all the key features of this continent locked into your brain. Let's get started. So let's kick things off with a single powerful fact that really defines Africa's place on our planet. It is the only continent that's crossed by the Equator, the Tropic of Cancer, and the Tropic of Capricorn. And listen, this isn't just a fun piece of trivia. This triple-line position is the whole reason behind its incredible range of climates, ecosystems, and, of course, culture.
Okay, to make sense of this massive continent, we've broken this explainer down into 5 main sections. We're going to start with its global position, then look at its critical waterways. After that, we'll zoom into some key regions, check out the major landforms, and wrap up with the great rivers and lakes that are basically the continent's lifeblood.
Right then, Section 1, let's get our bearings and figure out exactly where Africa sits on the globe and why that is just so important.
You know, what you're seeing here is just the beginning. It's not just the Tropic of Cancer, the Equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn. The prime meridian also slices right through West Africa. Just stop and think about what that means for a second. Africa is the only continent on the entire planet that sits in all 4 hemispheres: northern, southern, eastern, and western. Pretty incredible.
Moving on to Section 2. Look, Africa's position isn't just about imaginary lines on a map. It's defined by the huge bodies of water that surround it. And these oceans and seas, they're not just borders, they are the gateways that have shaped its history and its trade for thousands of years. At its heart, the continent is basically a giant island, right? Up north, you've got the Mediterranean, that classic barrier from Europe. To the west, the massive Atlantic Ocean. Over on the east, the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. And in the northeast, you have the super-strategic Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, which act as a bridge to the Middle East. And this is where it gets really interesting. These huge oceans are linked by these narrow, strategic passages we call choke points. You've got the Strait of Gibraltar connecting the Atlantic to the Mediterranean, then there's the man-made Suez Canal, which completely changed global trade, and then the Bab el-Mandeb, the Gate of Tears, which opens up to the Indian Ocean, and of course the vital Mozambique Channel. If you control these points, you control the world's shipping lane. All right, moving into Section 3. Now, to really get a handle on Africa's complex political geography, it helps to break it down into smaller, key regions. For your exams, remembering these is absolutely critical. So we're going to use a couple of simple little tricks, mnemonics, to help make these names stick.
First up, let's talk about a region you've definitely heard of, the Horn of Africa. That's the peninsula that juts out into the Indian Ocean. To remember the 4 countries that make it up, I just want you to think of the word seed.
And here they are. It's so simple. S is for Somalia, right there on the coast. E is for the huge landlocked Ethiopia. The second E is for Eritrea, which borders the Red Sea. And D is for the tiny but incredibly strategic Djibouti, guarding that Bab el-Mandeb Strait. S-E-E-D. Easy. Okay, now let's zip over to the continent's northern coast. The 5 African nations that border the Mediterranean Sea, you can remember them easily, from west to east with the mnemonic MATLE. So, just follow the coastline with me. M for Morocco, A for Algeria, T for Tunisia, L for Libya, and we finish with E for Egypt on the far eastern side. MATL. Another really simple one to just lock away for exam day.
All right, Section 4. Let's switch from political borders to the physical stuff, the landforms. We're about to do a whirlwind tour of the continent's backbone, its major mountain ranges and its vast, iconic deserts.
So, Africa has 2 major mountain systems that kind of anchor the whole continent. Up in the northwest, you've got the Atlas Mountains, and way down in the southeast, you have the Drakensberg Range. But its most famous peaks, they're actually standalone volcanoes. Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, that's the highest point on the whole continent, a dormant volcano with fertile slopes that are perfect for growing coffee. And then there's Mount Cameroon out west, which is Africa's only active volcano right now. Now let's talk deserts. The Sahara in the north is the big one, of course, the largest hot desert in the world, home to the nomadic Tuareg people. But don't forget the 2 big deserts in the south. The Namib is a really unique coastal desert, and it's so dry because of that cold Benguela current just offshore. And then there's the Kalahari, which is really more of a semi-desert, sitting in a rain shadow and famously home to the Bushman tribes. And now, for our final section, we're going to trace the lifeblood of the continent. The great rivers that carve through its plateaus, and the massive lakes that are forming as Africa literally pulls itself apart.
Let's start with something that trips people up in exams all the time. The Congo River, also called the Zaire, is so enormous that its basin is packed with resources like diamonds and copper, but its key geographic feature? It crosses the equator twice. Now, the Limpopo River in the south does the exact same thing, but with the Tropic of Capricorn. Just remember that symmetry. Congo crosses the equator, Limpopo crosses Capricorn.
And of course, the Nile. It's not just one river, it's really two. The White Nile gives it that steady, constant flow, and it starts way down in the Lake Victoria region. But it's the Blue Nile, coming out of the Ethiopian highlands, that provides over 80% of the water and all that fertile silt during the flood season. The two rivers meet at Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, and become the great river we all know, flowing north to a delta that's been a hotspot for growing cotton for centuries.
Okay, now for one of the most incredible geological dramas on the entire planet. And I'm not talking about ancient history. This is happening right now. There's a massive trench that is actively splitting the African continent in two.
And here you can see it. The Great Rift Valley is this series of deep trenches running north to south. As the land pulls apart, these deep, long lakes have formed inside it, like Lake Tanganyika, the second deepest lake in the world, and Lake Malawi. Now here is a super important point that catches so many people out. Africa's largest lake, Lake Victoria, sits between the two branches of the rift, but it is not a Rift Valley lake itself. Remember that.
So, since Lake Victoria is so important and separate from those rift lakes, let's lock in the three countries that sit on its shoreline. The easy mnemonic for this is KUT.
K is for Kenya, to the northeast, U is for Uganda, to the northwest, and T is for Tanzania, to the south. KUT. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. These are the three nations that share Africa's largest lake, the very source of the White Nile.
So there you have it. We've gone from Africa's coasts to its core, from its highest peaks to its deepest rifts. But the story is far from over. I mean, you have a continent that's literally splitting apart, that's incredibly rich in strategic minerals, and that holds the keys to major global shipping routes. The geographic map we looked at today, that's just a snapshot in time. The real question is, what will the geopolitical map of Africa look like a century from now?